When it comes to getting the perfect setup on your bullet pulleys, what we are really talking about is finding the right adjustments to get the perfect cable length so that you have right tension throughout the entire range of motion that you prefer. Obviously, if you need a little bit of slack, that's something that you can also take into account. And there's some key variables that we can modify and adjust that are going to make a big difference in our setup and how it feels at the end of the day. So, biggest thing that we're going to talk about here is low pulley setups. We're going to go through single cable use and we're going to go through dual cable use. So let's go through this step by step. When you're setting up your bullet pulleys, the first step is going to be the high pulley position. With your straps, which you have your short strap and your long strap, you can adjust how high you're going to set up the pulley by looping them around each other. And that way you can have the pulley be a little bit higher or a little bit lower. Another thing that you can do is get the loading pin to be a little bit higher by using something like a box, or you can also use several straps or one strap at the bottom connecting the cable to the loading pin itself if you don't need all of that cable length from the loading pin to the initial pulley. Next up is the bullet pulley angle at the bottom of the rack, so your low pulley. Now, whenever I first set up my bullet pulleys, my pull-up bar was positioned behind my front upright. So whenever I tried to face the bullet pulley forward, it wasn't giving me a good angle and the bullet pulley kept catching on the cable. So whenever I switched the position and made the bullet pulley face inward to the rack, that solved the problem and it actually gave me a way better angle that I could work with. And another tip is that the bottom cross member is also fair game, and in some cases it might even give you a better angle for your cable to travel through, depending on the demands of the exercise. Having access to these adjustments and these different positions of your low pulley is going to make it a lot easier to dial in a really good setup that feels really good and allows you to have a smooth motion the entire way. Now, moving on to dual cable use or bilateral movements, the biggest question here for me is the use of a single loading pin or multiple loading pins. Whenever you're using one loading pin, you are going to be a little bit more susceptible to swinging because you may be pulling a little bit more with one arm than the other. If you use two loading pins, each arm is independent of the other arm and the loading pin is going to swing a lot less. This also allows you to be a little bit more specific if you know that you have some imbalances in your movement. Depending on how many bullet pulleys you have access to and you have an extra bullet pulley, let's say for a single cable use, or if you decide to invest on a second pair of bullet pulleys if you're using a dual cable setup, you can use the extra bullet pulley to further adjust the cable length by separating the two pulleys on the same upright and creating a little bit more distance for the cable to travel through. Another additional benefit is that when you are using this setup, the bottom pulley is going to be fed the cable vertically the entire time, and that's going to be a lot easier of an angle for it to handle so that you can have more versatility of play with the angles that you're using. If you have a 6-post squat rack and you can push the loading pins to be being pulled by the high pulley far back enough on the rack, you can do bench exercises like cable presses and flies by just pulling the bench up to it. But here comes the best piece of advice. If you can use a spotter arm to hold the high pulley and push the loading pin on the outside or the front of the squat rack, you can use some band pegs and use these little collars that are tighteners essentially so that you can lock the band peg in place. And then you would just tighten it with an Allen wrench. And if you don't want to go through the process of tightening, then you can also use some of these pulley pins that some of these companies make. There's a lot of these out there. These specifically are from F&F Steel, and they do a very good job. So make sure that you're locking in your spotter arm so that you're not risking the spotter arm tilting. Then you're going to put the band peg about 3/4 of the way through. You're going to tighten up the collar, and then you have access to a stable location that's not going to come out, and you can put your high pulley on that band peg. So you're going to loop that right through the top, and you attach your high pulley to that. After this, you just go through the setup as usual. You're going to feed the cable through the high pulley, then the bullet pulley at the position that you want. And the other good thing is that if you have a spotter arm that has several holes down the spotter arm, you can also now have adjustability of how far out you're trying to put that high pulley, and therefore giving you even more adjustability for cable length. Another thing that now you have access to is you can actually change how high you have the spotter arm, and you can even further adjust that cable length to get the right position. And of course, we can bring all of these tips together, use the spotter arm, and invest on a second pair of bullet pulleys to have even more adjustability so that you can get the cable to have tension all the way down to the bottom of your upright. And you can also tweak and adjust everything that you can have access to, from the band peg at the top of the high pulley to the second bullet pulley and everything in between.